What if ambition wasn't a dirty word, but a declaration of possibility? For too long, women have received subtle signs, causing them to play small and settle for fitting in. But here, we do things differently. We ask ourselves, what would I love? Instead of settling for less. And when fear shows up, that's good news. It means you're on the cutting edge and moving in the right direction. We take small, intentional steps that align with our values, dreams, and the legacy we want to create. If you've ever felt stuck between ambition and expectations, between wanting more and wondering if you're allowed to go after it, this conversation is for you. Today's guest, Kara Taylor, knows precisely what it means to redefine ambition. A licensed clinical social worker, CEO, and former Air Force leader, she spent 12 years in the military before successfully transitioning to business ownership. Now, she's helping women, veterans, and professionals achieve clarity, confidence, and courage. The path to something greater starts with a single step, and today we're taking it together. Let's dive in.
Kara, I'm so happy to have you on and here to talk about dream building, imagination, and ambition. Kara, I know ambition is often seen as a naughty word for women. It's something that we're not supposed to have or not supposed to show. And I want to understand, how do you think we can redefine ambition for women? And how does imagination play a role in breaking through these societal barriers?
Well, first off, Natalie, I just want to thank you for having me here. I'm really grateful to be here and to be able to have this conversation with you. And just thank you for offering this to the community. I don't think of ambition as a dirty word at all. In fact, I think of it as a declaration of possibility. And when we redefine ambition, we're starting to give ourselves permission to dream boldly and unapologetically. And I think of imagination as that gateway to breaking down those societal barriers and allowing us to envision a world where we get to define success on our terms. So starting with imagination, we want to ask questions like, what would I love, instead of what should I settle for?
I love that. Can you tell me a time when you used this thinking process?
Yes, absolutely, Natalie. I would say I use it every single day since I learned about it in October of 2022. It just has changed my whole life up and down and for the better.
Awesome. Yeah, so we'll get to even deeper on that one for sure. Now, one of the things that I've had the privilege of doing is watching you at work. I went to a retreat and we had several women there, and you were leading us through a dream building exercise. And there was a lady there that had just suffered some traumatic events, very difficult events. And she showed up and she was not looking too happy. And it was understandable when she told us what was going on, why things were not looking good for her. However, after an hour of working with you, maybe even it happened within a half hour, it was really amazing to see how her face just lit up and she transformed into something super powerful by allowing herself to dream. It was amazing.
It gives me chills just thinking about it. Definitely an emotional thing and a positive way to get to watch people make these transformations, because this concept of dream building is unfamiliar to us.
Why is that?
Yeah, I think no one ever teaches us to do this. It's not in our curriculums, right? Like your parents don't teach you because they don't know. And once you start to learn this, it just completely changes your life.
So we know from neuroscience that there's two different pathways in our brain that cause us to either be convergent in our thinking or divergent. And to dream, you need to be very divergent. But the convergent side can shut down those dreams. And this is where I think the inner critic is located. And we talk about the inner critic in episode 4, really closely. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, and maybe you could give a little bit of background about yourself and how you know what you know. I'm wondering how, when you're helping so many people break through their limitations to get to their dream, how do you guide someone who struggles with their inner critic or imposter syndrome, especially when they're embarking on a really bold dream?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. I love it because this is how I've spent my career understanding this and helping people make these changes. So, just a little bit of background: I got my clinical social work license in 2007. So, I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to do this work many, many years. I guess over 17 now. That's crazy to say that out loud. Um, and basically, you want to understand a concept of first we have a thought. That thought generates a feeling. That feeling generates an action, and that action generates a result. So, just to break it down in a very simple example, is if you can't find your keys and then you have a thought, I'm going to have a bad day, then you start showing up agitated, right? You're feeling agitated that you can't find your keys and this idea that you're going to have a bad day. And then you're carrying around that energy and you start doing things behavior wise that are congruent with having a bad day, right? And that's your result. And as I was mentioning earlier, like no one anywhere teaches you how to think differently. We don't learn this in schools. We don't learn this from our parents. And it's only because they don't know either.
Right.
So I think understanding this very basic concept helps us learn how to silence that inner core imposter syndrome and think a different way than we've done before.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for that.
Yeah. One other thing I'd like to add, Natalie,
Sure.
simple and understanding, I think that basic concept, once you hear about it, executing it's a whole nother story. I just gave you a very easy example, but when you start dealing with really deep rooted thoughts that you've had for decades, it's not as easy to do. So highly recommend you invest in either a coach or a therapist who is objective and can help you learn the skill.
Yeah. And it's not like a bad thing to do that. I think especially for women who are breaking barriers, having that level of support makes a big difference.
Huge, huge difference.
So you have studied transformational success for close to 2 decades. What is one principle or practice you believe every woman should embrace to overcome internal barriers and dream bigger than they thought ever possible?
Yeah. So to kind of expand on what I was saying earlier, I think one of the most powerful principles that I've learned is just how much our thoughts shape our reality, right? So if you want to look at what you've been thinking, look at your results because your results never lie. Now, I remember when I first heard that, I was a little bit defensive, Natalie, because we get caught up in the different situations, circumstances, conditions, and those are really good reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give ourselves permission to get caught there, to stay stuck there. But where our focus goes, our energy flows. So if we're focusing on fear, if we're focusing on limitations, we're going to have more of them in our life. But if you focus on possibility, abundance, on your vision, we know that doors start to open for us and we come from a different energetic state when we're in that place. So, I would really encourage women out there to just spend a few minutes every single day talking to themselves about what they would love to have in their life and then taking those small, consistent action steps every single day to move you in that direction.
Small, consistent steps, very tiny. It all matters.
Yes. I think honestly, the tiny steps are more important than these big steps that we take because oftentimes the big steps we take are unsustainable for long periods of time. But, every day doing something 5-10 minutes that moves that needle in that direction, you're going to have amazing results in a year.
Yeah, I love it. So you have a military background, which equipped you with leadership, I can only imagine, and adaptability. How has that experience shaped your perspective on ambition and the courage it takes to chase a big dream?
Yeah, the military taught me so many different things on so many different levels. Of course, I learned about discipline. I learned a lot about resilience, the importance of having a mission. And I think if, the military, we focus on mission in our personal lives or in the civilian world, we're talking about goals, we're talking about visions and dreams. And we know that I believe that all those qualities are essential for pursuing big dreams. The other thing, Natalie, is I would say the skill of courage, right? And being able to do things in the absence of fear. And an example of that for myself is, I decided to leave the military, separate after over 12 years of duty service to pursue my vision and my dream of entrepreneurship and to be able to coach other people like myself to make that transition. And it was a big leap of faith. And I know this sounds funny to say I had safety and security in the military, but I did. I had a safe and secure job. I had a paycheck that was twice a month. I knew what it was going to be every single month. And I left that world and I didn't know what was going to happen. So, just having that courage to pursue your dreams, I think is so powerful.
What do you think? I know that you had the courage. And people say if you have fear, you do it anyway. That's what courage is. How would you define courage, and
Yes.
how do you help others go with courage instead of fear?
Yeah. I think they do absolutely go hand in hand. You do have fear show up with courage and you do it anyway. If you start having fear, that's good news. I think reminding yourself when that fear shows up, this is good news because this means I'm on the cutting edge. Start to redefine what that feeling is and just understanding from a basic physiological perspective what's happening is, you have fear, you start maybe your heart's racing, you're shaky, sweaty, whatever comes up, usually some form of physical anxiety. And then, of course, those thoughts. But when we understand that we're going into a fight, flight, or freeze response, that our brain is just trying to keep us safe and keep us playing small in the land of the familiar. And when you start to break out of that, you are going to have that pop up and we just keep going. We keep taking those steps and eventually your nervous system starts to regulate.
Yeah, I was going to say, even as a sales professional, part of my career, I was in sales. And I remember I was working in Dallas and I was promoting products to other researchers. And I'm a molecular biologist by trade. I have some protein biology in my background, but it's not as familiar to me as it is molecular. So I sold the heck out of my molecular products. Molecular products help you study DNA. And I also had in my bag that I needed to sell was protein. And we were challenged to promote protein products. Well, the protein products were in Building K, the third floor. And I was afraid of the third floor of Building K. And so I was like, okay, what is this going to do for my overall business? Because as a sales rep, you're thinking of your stuff as a business. I'm like, it's going to give me a lot more security because people always have to buy these protein products because you run out of it. I'm like, I have to get over that fear. And so what I decided is that if I didn't have one palm sweating moment a day, I wasn't pushing myself as a businesswoman. And I think it goes along with having the fear and the courage. It's like, okay, great. My palms are sweating. I'm doing my job.
Exactly. Like if you aren't scared, you're not dreaming big enough.
There you go. Well, and it's interesting when I went to Building K, I'm like, hey, these people are pretty nice. And besides that, not very many sales reps are here. This could be a good opportunity for me. Everybody else is scared. So if I'm not scared and I'm going through here, I have no competition.
Well, and it doesn't mean, right, that you're not scared. You were scared and you did it anyway.
Yeah. And I learned something. I learned it wasn't so bad.
And that's what happens, right? Is we think something's scary and then we go to do it. And then you're like, that wasn't that scary at all.
Yeah, for sure. So you talk about creating a richer, more fulfilling life. I mean, you mentioned that your face got super bright. How can women reconcile their ambitions with societal expectations? Like, you're not supposed to be doing that. Women, you're the kind of the secretary of the building, even if you're the VP. So how do women reconcile their ambitions with societal expectations to ensure they're building not just success, but a legacy that they're proud of?
Okay. Yeah, I think reconciliation starts with being able to define success on your terms rather than society's. So I think one of the things that allows us to define success on our own terms is knowing what it is you would love to have in your life, getting clear on what your values are, and letting those two pieces guide your decision making. I also think building a legacy doesn't mean that we have to choose between ambition and fulfillment. We get to combine both of those together. And that when our goals align with our values, the work that we do not only fulfills us, but leaves an impact that resonates beyond our lifetime. So, really, a fulfilling legacy is created through that intentionality and the courage to live authentically.
And I appreciate that because I feel like in starting the podcast, I have begun to do something that is along the lines of my values and also my vision and my dream. And it seems that I feel like I'm just as busy, if not more busy, at work and doing this on the side. But just because it's aligned with my values, I feel more fulfilled and I'm getting it all done
Well,
without feeling burnt out.
right. And when you're doing things that you love, it doesn't feel like work, like you just get excited about it. I have so many people like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're adding another thing that you're doing. And I'm like, but I love to do it. Like it feels like a hobby, right? And so that's where I want people to get. I mean, there is parts of our job always that are going to be work, but like it's about being a coach, not the coaching itself, but maybe running a business that are a little bit more work like. But when I get to do this, when I get to have these conversations, when I get to coach, it makes all that other stuff worth it. Like I can see the purpose in it. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And you work with heart-centered professionals, healthcare professionals. How do you help clients balance their desires, their dreams, to lead with their hearts while still pursuing their ambitions unapologetically?
Yeah, I've just spent so much time helping people get clarity on what their vision is, and that like guides everything. You would be maybe surprised, maybe not surprised, how many people, when you ask them questions, about their health and well-being, their love and relationships, their vocation, their time and money freedom, those are the four areas that I focus on. You'd be surprised how many people have no idea what they would love in those areas.
And then to describe them with such clarity, that takes a little bit of work. Like you have to sit down
Right.
and take the time to, for
Right.
me, I write it out and then I find pictures. And then on the back of the picture, I write it out again and I write it out and I write it out.
Yeah, it's a time consuming process, but it's so critical that we do this. And then having someone to like bounce that off of, it's where I think the value of coaching comes in. So, for example, someone may say something like, I want to get out of debt. Well, that's coming from that scarcity mindset rather than like at the end of the month, all my bills are paid in full, all my balances on my cards and loans are at zero. Can you hear the difference between that energy and I want to get out of debt?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Writing in the positive.
right. And that's what generates that energy that I was talking about earlier that helps these professionals move forward and take those action steps.
And, it's kind of funny too, when you write down all these things, at least for me, I've written it down and sometimes, I review it every morning, every evening, every morning, every evening, like clockwork. And then there's times when I'm like, okay, just take a breather. And I keep working. I keep taking those little steps. Then I go back to what I had written out and I'm like, holy cow, I did it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think they say we overestimate what we'll accomplish in a year and underestimate what we're going to accomplish, whether it's 5 years, 10 years from now. And it's just amazing to be like, holy heck, I said I was going to do that. And usually that path to completing it ends up being shorter than what we thought.
So as we come to the end of our time together, I just wanted to give you a chance to tie it all together and let our listeners, these are people that are seeking information about how to dream big. And some of these folks might even be healthcare providers interested in becoming an entrepreneur themselves. Just give us some final thoughts. And then for those folks that are interested in, how would they get a hold of you if they wanted to start building that dream with you?
Yeah. So to start the visioning process, man, there's so much information out there available to people on dream building. So I would just go out there. I would start doing some research, getting some help with it, as I mentioned earlier, because let me just use myself for an example. Like I do this for a living, but I have someone help me create it because we have blinders on when we go to do these things ourselves. We can't always see our limiting beliefs. Right. So like I remember one time when I was working with a coach and, she would say something like, oh, that's just a thought that you're having. And I would be dead set. No, it's not a thought. It is the truth. It is a fact, I do this for a living and I couldn't see that. And, eventually yeah, you're right. And, starting to be able to shift that. So I feel like finding somebody objectively to help you with this who is truly invested in your growth. A lot of times we want that from our family members, but sometimes our family members, because they're coming with their own limiting beliefs, they may not support us in the way that we want. My mentor, Mary Morrissey, talked about holding your vision like a newborn baby, holding it close to you as you're taking those steps. That doesn't mean you can't share it with anyone, but you really want to share it in a community where you feel empowered to, to have it, to birth it to life.
Right.
So, I think there's that piece is just doing your research, really getting into this. And then to your other question, I just created a new Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/Kara Taylor Coaching. If you are interested in joining that free group and getting some resources to help you as you're on transition.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I thank you for being here. We'll be talking in the future on another episode, taking this a little bit further.
I love that.
Now that we know ambition isn't something to hide, let me ask you this. What's stopping you from stepping into your biggest dreams? For too long, we've played small, waiting for permission, doubting ourselves. But here's the truth. If you feel fear, it doesn't mean stop. It means go. It means you're on the cutting edge of right. But I get it. That little voice, the inner critic, keeps whispering, who do you think you are? How will you get this done? It makes us hesitate, question, and even walk away from what we truly want. Here's what I want you to know. You are not alone. You don't have to navigate this journey by yourself, and you don't have to take a giant risky leap all at once. The most powerful transformations come from small, intentional steps. Steps that feel doable, steps that build confidence, steps that create momentum. You don't have to figure everything out today. You don't have to take a massive leap into the unknown. This is about one small, meaningful step in the direction of what you want. You can break free from the limits you didn't choose. You can dream boldly. And you can create a life that feels right for you. And before we go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up, for staying all the way through, and for choosing to invest in yourself. That alone, that's a step forward. So if you've ever wondered what's next for me, this is your invitation to explore. Your next step is right here. Take radical responsibility for your life and watch the ripple effect unfold.